Alright, so I have the last page of the review for test number 8. The two problems that you see on the screen right now are dealing with hills and SAS here, because we have a right triangle with an altitude. So if I look at 22, I'm trying to find only y. So this is a very simple problem where you're just only finding one variable here. So what I like to do is, if you have no idea which formula to use, write out your organizer. I'm gonna write H, L1, L1, S1, that's hills with 1, and then this is hills with 2. And then lastly, we have SAS, so segment 1 altitude, altitude to segment 2. Okay, so I have my organizer ready, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my figure, I'm going to label. So this here, this is the hypotenuse, that's 13. Okay, how do we know that this is the hypotenuse? Well, it's across from the 90-degree angle, and 9 plus 4 is 13. This is the altitude, this is segment 1, this is segment 2, leg 1, leg 2. Okay, so we know what segment 1 is. Segment 1 is 9. So I'll put a 9 here, and then leg 2, that's y. So y. Segment 2 is 4. So segment 2 goes here. Okay, and then the hypotenuse is 13, because this is right here. So 13 here, 13 here, and it looks like, just by looking at my organizer, I'm going to be using hills with a subnotation 2 because, number 1, it has all the information that I need, and 2, I'm solving for y, and that is what we see there. So I don't necessarily need to figure out, I don't necessarily need to use this or this at all. I'm just going to pay attention to the hills with the subnotation 2 that, I filled in. So it's H over L2 equals L2 over S2. So 13 over y is equal to y over 4. So I have y times y, which is y squared, which is equal to 13 times 4. Okay, so 13 times 4 is, what is 13 times 4? That is 52. Okay, so basically I have y squared equals, actually, what am I doing? I don't necessarily need to multiply this. Why? I'm going to take the square root here. So the square root of y squared is just y, and that is equal to the square root of 13 times 4. So I have the square root of 13 and the square root of 4. 4 is a perfect square. So the square root of 4 is 2. So 2 is going to go outside of the square root. And what remains on the inside here is this 13. You can't break down 13 other than, 1 and 13. So that's it. Y is equal to 2 root 13, and that's my answer. And that's my thought process on how to approach these types of problems. Number 23, find x, y, and z. Okay, again, what I like to do is write out my organizer. So H, L1, L1, S1, H, L2, L2, S2, and S1, altitude, altitude, segment 2. So if you're taking your test, I highly encourage you to essentially write out your organizer. And if you don't have room, you got to go find room so you can put everything all together. Okay, so I have all this. Let's go ahead and look at our figure. We're going to label. So Z is the hypotenuse. And then this is segment 1, this is segment 2, this is leg 1, leg 2. That's the altitude right there. Okay, so leg 1, or let me just go ahead and say the hypotenuse is Z. So for all the hypotenuse you see, put Z underneath every H you see. And then leg 1 is Y. So Y here, Y there. Segment 1 is 2. Leg 2 is, we don't know what leg 2 is, so put a question mark there. And segment 2 is, where's segment 2? That's X. Okay, cool. So segment 2 is X, and we know that segment 1 is 2. Altitude is 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's see. So I can't use this because we have one, too many variables, two, there are question marks here, so I don't think we're going to be using this at all. If I look up here, I have, z, y, y2. Again, I can't really create an equation dealing with more than, one variable. So the best thing to approach here is that this, segment 1, altitude, segment 2. So, that's a 2 right there, so it's, is it a 2? Yes, it is. So it's 2 over 3 is equal to 3 over x. So then I'm going to cross multiply. 3 times 3, that's 9. And then 2 times x is just 2x. So your answer is x is equal to 4.5. Okay, so x is 4.5. We found that. Can I use that to essentially figure out, what I need to figure out? So, okay. Let's take a look. This is 2, and then we know that x is 4.5. And that this part here plus this part here, that's going to give me that whole thing. That's going to help us figure out what z is. So z is essentially that part plus part equals whole. It's 2 plus that x, which we already found. That's 4.5, right? So 2 plus 4.5. Well, sorry if this looks confusing. This is a z, by the way. So that's z is equal to 2 plus 4.5. So z is equal to 6.5. Great. Look at that. We found x. We found z. Now our goal here is to figure out what y is. And since we found what z is, we can plug it in to our formula. And essentially that's 6.5 over y equals y over 2. It's basically the hypotenuse over leg 1 equals leg 1 over segment 1. Okay, cross multiply. Y times y is y squared. And then 6.5 times 2 is that 13? I assume that's 13. I'm not really good with my arithmetic, but yep, that's 13. So the square root of y squared is y, and the square root of 13 is just the square root of 13. So that's our answer. All right, let's go ahead and solve for x. So we don't have a right triangle with an altitude. This is just a regular right triangle. So you're using the Pythagorean theorem with this one here. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We know that c is always across from the 90-degree angle. So I can go ahead and replace c with 15. So 12 squared plus x squared equals 15 squared. And if we need to simplify the radical, if not, then don't. So we have 12 squared, that's 144. And then we have x squared equals 15 squared is 225. Now, 225 minus 144, what the heck is that? Let me see. So 225 minus 144, that is 81. So x squared is equal to 81. And y'all, if I take the square root, well, we have x on the left-hand side and the square root of 81. 81 is a perfect square. And let me go ahead and show you. Square root of 81, that should be 9. So x is equal to 9. And that's your answer. All right. One more thing, just in case, it shows up. But I'm going to throw a geometric mean problem for you. 1/5 and 25. So find the geometric mean between 1/5 and 25. That's essentially 25 divided by 5. So x is equal to the square root of 1/5 times 25. X is equal to root 5. Can I break down the 5 here? No. So this is basically simplified. It's like simplifying fractions, but with radicals. Okay, so x is equal to the square root of 5. That's your answer.